The book of Exodus is about God's great rescue, how he saved his people from slavery and showed them that he is faithful, powerful, and always keeps his promises. It's a story of freedom, miracles, and a love so strong that nothing could stop it. It started when many years had passed since the days of Joseph. The children of Israel were still living in Egypt, but they had become a great and mighty people. A new Pharaoh rose to power, one who didn't remember Joseph or how he had saved Egypt. Pharaoh grew afraid that the Israelites were becoming too many, so he made them slaves. They were forced to work in the hot sun, building cities and carrying heavy loads. The Egyptians treated them cruelly, but even in their suffering, the Israelites continued to grow in number because God's promise to Abraham was still alive. Then Pharaoh did something even more terrible. He commanded that every baby boy born to the Israelites should be thrown into the Nile River. But one brave mother hid her baby as long as she could. When it became too dangerous, she placed him in a small basket and set it gently on the river, praying that God would protect him. The basket floated down the water until it was found by Pharaoh's daughter. She felt compassion for the crying baby and decided to raise him as her own. She named him Moses, which means drawn out, because he was drawn out of the water. Moses grew up in the palace with all the riches of Egypt, but deep inside he never forgot that he was one of God's people. One day, he saw an Egyptian hurting an Israelite slave, and in anger, Moses struck the Egyptian and killed him. Fearing Pharaoh's wrath, Moses fled into the desert, where he lived for many years as a shepherd. He thought his story was over, but God was just beginning to write the most important chapter of his life. One day, while Moses was tending his sheep, he saw something strange, a bush that was on fire but wasn't burning up. As he went closer, a voice called out from the flames, "Moses, Moses!" It was God. Moses was afraid, but God told him, "Take off your sandals, for you are standing on holy ground." Then God said something that would change everything. He had heard the cries of his people in Egypt, and he was sending Moses to lead them out of slavery into a land flowing with milk and honey. Moses hesitated. He didn't feel brave or capable. "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh?" he asked. But God said, "I will be with you." Still, Moses worried, what if the people didn't believe him? What if he couldn't speak well? But God promised to give him signs and even sent his brother Aaron to help him. With that, Moses returned to Egypt to face Pharaoh. When Moses and Aaron stood before Pharaoh and said, "Let my people go," Pharaoh refused. His heart was hard. He didn't believe in the God of Israel. So God showed his power through mighty wonders. The Nile River turned to blood. Frogs, gnats, and flies filled the land. Livestock died, boils broke out on people's skin. Hail and locusts destroyed crops, and darkness covered Egypt. Each time, Pharaoh promised to let the Israelites go, but then changed his mind. Finally, God sent one last terrible plague, the death of every firstborn in Egypt. But he gave his people a way to be saved. Each family was to sacrifice a perfect lamb and put its blood on their doorposts. When the Lord saw the blood, he would pass over that house, sparing everyone inside. That night, there was great sorrow in Egypt, but among the Israelites, there was safety and hope. This became known as the Passover, a celebration of God's great deliverance. At last Pharaoh gave in. He told Moses, "Go, leave Egypt. Take your people and worship your God." The Israelites gathered their things and set out quickly. But not long after, Pharaoh changed his mind again and sent his army to chase them. The people found themselves trapped, the Red Sea in front of them and Pharaoh's soldiers behind. They were terrified, but Moses said, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord." Then he stretched out his staff over the sea, and God did something miraculous. The waters parted. The Israelites walked through on dry ground, walls of water towering beside them. When Pharaoh's army followed, the sea closed back over them, and not one of them survived. God had rescued his people completely. After that, Moses and the Israelites sang songs of joy, praising God for his mighty power. But the journey wasn't over. They traveled through the wilderness toward the land God had promised. Along the way, they faced hunger, thirst, and fear. When they complained, God sent bread from heaven called manna and water from a rock. He provided everything they needed, showing them that he would always care for them. Then they came to Mount Sinai, where God's presence covered the mountain in fire and smoke. There, God gave his people something precious, the 10 Commandments. rules to live by so they could walk in his ways. The mountain shook, thunder roared, and lightning flashed as God spoke. He wanted his people to be holy, to love him above all, and to love one another. But even after seeing all these miracles, the people still struggled to obey. While Moses was on the mountain for 40 days, they grew impatient and made a golden calf to worship. When Moses came down and saw it, he was heartbroken. Yet God, though angry, showed mercy once again. He renewed his covenant and continued to lead them day by day, with a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. God also gave Moses instructions for building a sacred tent called the tabernacle, a place where his presence would dwell among them. Every detail was designed by God, from the Ark of the Covenant to the golden lampstands, showing that he wanted to be near his people. The book of Exodus ends with the glory of the Lord filling the tabernacle. God was no longer far away. He was living among his people, guiding them toward the land he had promised. Exodus is a story of freedom, not just from slavery but from sin. It reminds us that when we feel trapped or afraid, God still makes a way. He hears our cries, he fights for us, and he keeps his promises. Just as he rescued his people from Egypt, he would one day send Jesus to rescue the world, not through a staff or a sea, but through a cross and an empty tomb.